wind howled across the plains of New Mexico, dry as bone and sharp as knives. Dust clouds swirled over the horizon, ghostly shapes moving across a land that never forgave weakness. Out there, a man either bent to the will of the desert or broke beneath it. Elias Carter had spent 12 years bent, but unbroken. A widower, a farmer, a man who carried silence like a second skin. Elias lived alone on his stretch of land some 20 miles outside of Lincoln. His house was little more than sun-scorched timber. His barn sagged against the winds, and the fields bore wheat so stubborn it seemed to resent the effort it took to grow. Yet he endured. Every morning he woke before the sun, fed the mare, worked the soil, mended fences, and carried out the same lonely routine because there was nothing else left to do. The war had taken his brothers, consumption had taken his wife, time had taken his laughter, and then came the auction. It was a Saturday in late spring when Elias rode into town, dust in his beard and loneliness in his eyes. Lincoln bustled the way frontier towns always did, half desperation, half swagger. Cowboys with spurs jingling strode down Main Street, rifles slung across their backs. Outlaws leaned in the shadows outside the saloon, watching for weakness. The sheriff de Murdoch, a man with a belly too big for his badgerland outside his office, trying not to look as tired as he was. Elias had only come in for supplies: flour, nails, a new plowshare if he could find one. But as he tied his mare outside the trading post, a voice rang down the street. "Step right up, gents. Step right up. The army's got itself a prize. Today one you ain't likely to see again." A crowd had gathered at the far end of the street, near the courthouse steps. Soldiers in blue uniforms stood guard, rifles in hand, and between them, bound in rope, stood a woman. Her skin was bronze, her hair black as raven's wings, her eyes hard as obsidian. She was barefoot, her dress torn and dirt-stained. An Apache, Elias's breath caught. The auctioneer, one of those slick-tongued traders who made his living off the suffering of others, lifted his arms high. "Gentlemen, what you see before you is the last of her kind. Captured in the Sierra Madre raid last month. No tribe left, no kin left. She's all alone in this world. But lucky for you, she's young, strong, and fit for work. The army don't want her, so she goes to the highest bidder." The crowd jeered. Some laughed. A few men shouted crude jokes about what they'd do if they won her. Elias's stomach turned. He should have walked away, should have gone into the trading post, bought his flour, and ridden home. But he didn't. Something in the woman's eyes held him fast. She stood tall, unbroken, defiant, even in chains. He saw in her what he'd once seen in himself: a refusal to bow, no matter the weight on her shoulders. Bidding started at $20. A rancher offered $30. A saloon keeper called out $40. The crowd chuckled and shouted, some treating it like sport, others like a dirty joke. Elias clenched his jaw. Against his better judgment, he raised his hand. $50. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. "We got 50. Do I hear 60? Another man called 65. Elias answered with 70. The numbers climbed. 90. 100. 110. Most men dropped out, muttering about the waste of money. Elias didn't stop. He didn't know why, only that he couldn't let them have her. When the dust settled, the final bid was his. $140. Nearly all he had. The auctioneer grinned wide, slapped him on the back, and shoved the rope into his hand. "Congratulations, Mr. She's yours now. Don't let her bite." The crowd laughed as Elias led her away. The ride back to the farm was silent. She sat behind him on the mare, hands still bound. Elias didn't know her name, didn't know what to say. She didn't look at him once, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When they reached his farm, he cut her bonds and stepped back, waiting. She rubbed her wrists but didn't run. She just stood there, silent, proud, watching him with unreadable eyes. "I ain't gonna hurt you," Elias said, his voice rough from disuse. "You're free to go if you want. But this land's hard. Ain't no tribe left out there. You stay, you'll have food, a roof, and work. That's all I got to offer." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she nodded. Her name, he would learn later, was Naira. Life did not soften overnight. She worked the fields beside him, moved with the strength of someone born to survive. She spoke little, but when she did, her voice carried a quiet fire. Slowly, the silence of the farm began to change. The emptiness of the house filled with small sounds: footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the low murmur of words exchanged. But the West was never a place that let peace last. Whispers traveled faster than wind. By summer, men in town had begun talking about the Apache woman up at Carter's place. Some laughed, some spat, others, men with darker desires, took interest. It was a saloon brawl that set it all off. Elias had gone into town for supplies. As he carried flour to his mare, a ranch hand staggered out of the saloon, whiskey on his breath. He smirked. "Hey, Carter, how's your squaw? He or she is wild as they come. Maybe I'll pay a visit one night, see if she screams." The laughter that followed was cut short by Elias's fist. The man went down hard, nose broken, blood spilling on the dirt. Silence fell, then chaos. By the time the sheriff pulled him off, 3 men were down and Elias's knuckles were raw. Sheriff Murdoch shook his head. "Damn fool, Carter, you're stirring up trouble that don't need stirring." But the trouble was stirred. Word spread, and before long, outlaws with nothing to lose, and men with too much hate in their hearts, came riding for the farm. The first attack came at midnight. Shots rang out, shattering the silence. Elias and Naira fought them off, rifles cracking in the dark. Smoke hung in the air, the barn set ablaze, shadows riding off into the night. The second came a week later, more men, more guns. Elias took a bullet in the shoulder. Naira dragged him inside, tended his wound, her hands steady, even as gunfire rattled the windows. Together they drove them off again, but it couldn't last. They both knew it. The West was a land of reckoning. Reckoning came at high noon. The final showdown unfolded under the merciless sun. 6 riders came, faces hard, guns ready. Outlaws, bounty hunters, ranch hands with grudges. They wanted Naira. They wanted to teach Elias a lesson. Elias stood in the dust outside his home, rifle in hand, sweat on his brow. Naira stood beside him, bow in hand crafted from old hickory she'd carved herself. "Give her up, Carter," the leader sneered. "Ain't no place in this world for the likes of her. You know it." Elias spat in the dirt. "You want her, you'll have to ride over me first." The street fell silent. Then the guns came out. The fight was thunder and blood. Elias dropped 2 men before a bullet grazed his side. Naira's arrows flew swift and true, felling another. The air filled with dust, smoke, and the screams of dying men. When it was done, the outlaws lay scattered in the dust. Elias stood bleeding, rifle nearly empty. Naira stood beside him, chest heaving, her eyes burning with defiance. They had won, but at a price. The barn was ash. The farm was scarred. Elias bore wounds that would never fully heal. But in the silence that followed, as the wind carried the stench of gunpowder away, he knew one thing with certainty. He was no longer alone, and neither was she. The West would never forgive them. The world would never understand them. But on that patch of stubborn land, under the endless desert sky, Elias and Naira began to carve out a life not of loneliness, not of chains, but of survival, side by side, in a land that took everything. They had found each other, and in the Wild West, that was enough.